If you ever find yourself in a really nasty contract dispute, like maybe a business partnership just turns incredibly toxic,
Oh, yeah, that is always a nightmare.
right? Or, a vendor just completely ghosts you after taking this massive deposit, the sheer dread of going to court is honestly often worse than the dispute itself.
Absolutely.
Because, you are instantly picturing years of your life lost to delays, staggering attorney fees, and just a massive emotional drain. But, and here is the really interesting part, what if the government actually had a secret parallel justice system designed explicitly to keep you away from a judge?
It's a reality that most people are completely blind to until they're literally standing in the middle of a crisis.
Yeah.
Because we're sort of conditioned to view justice as this absolute binary thing. Like you're either dragging someone into court to fight it out in front of a judge, or you are simply cutting your losses and giving up.
There's no middle ground in people's minds.
Exactly. But there is an entirely separate, massive infrastructure operating right beneath the surface that's designed to offer a third path.
Which is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive into the architecture of alternative justice. I'll be your host, and joining me is our resident expert to help break all this down.
Glad to be here.
So, we are unpacking some fascinating source material today, specifically textbook excerpts detailing the Philippine Office for Alternative Dispute Resolution, which is almost always just referred to as the OADR.
Right, the OADR.
And our mission for this deep dive is to act as your guides to deconstruct exactly how a government institutionalizes a real plan B for justice. We really want to show you the Alternative Dispute Resolution, or ADR. It's not just, a handshake agreement in a smoky back room.
Far from it.
Right. It is a highly structured, heavily backed system.
And, understanding how this specific system is built is really crucial for anyone who values their time and their resources. I mean, this goes way beyond just legal trivia.
For sure.
The state has quite literally built a machine to help you resolve disputes efficiently. But a machine is absolutely useless to you if you don't know where the levers are or how the gears turn.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we look at what this office actually does on a day-to-day basis, we really have to look at where it sits in the hierarchy of power.
Yeah, that's foundational.
Because if the OADR is just like some underfunded fringe department buried in a government basement, no one in the business or legal world is going to take it seriously.
Right, it would just be ignored.
Exactly. But our sources show that the OADR is an agency directly attached to the Department of Justice, the DOJ. And it is headed by an executive director. But the appointment process is what's really telling here.
Oh, definitely.
The executive director is appointed directly by the president of the Philippines, taking into consideration the recommendation of the Secretary of Justice.
So the secretary nominates, but the president puts the final stamp on it.
Yes. It's like a nimble startup incubated entirely within a massive traditional corporation, being the DOJ. But why does it matter that the highest executive office in the land is making this appointment rather than, I don't know, a mid-level government manager?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is fundamentally a signaling mechanism.
Okay, how so?
By having a presidential appointee at the helm of this office, the state is broadcasting a very clear message to the public and specifically to the legal community.
Right.
It says that the government treats alternative dispute resolution with the highest possible level of seriousness.
It essentially prevents the traditional court system from viewing ADR as just the minor leads.
Precisely. When the president places the leader of this agency, it grants the OADR this immediate, undeniable legitimacy. It elevates alternative dispute resolution from a secondary, informal option into a parallel pillar of the justice system itself.
Wow, yeah.
It really shows that the state is actively investing political capital into keeping you out of the traditional courtroom.
So we have an executive director with some very serious backing. But obviously, one person doesn't run a national justice initiative completely alone.
No, definitely not.
So how do they actually operate the machine? That brings us to the internal structure, which our sources break down into 4 specialized divisions.
Right, the 4 pillars.
First, there is the Secretariat, which basically provides direct support and carries out whatever tasks are assigned by the executive director. They're essentially the operational backbone.
The day-to-day engine.
Exactly. But then we look at the specific mandates. There is a Public Information and Promotion Division. Their entire job is disseminating information on mediation, conciliation, and arbitration, actively promoting ADR as this fast, effective way to settle disagreements.
Which is a huge job, honestly.
For sure. Then there is the Training Division, setting standards and issuing certificates. And finally, a Records and Library Division, tasked with keeping a central repository of ADR laws, rules, case law, and articles, both local and international.
And, those specific divisions tell you exactly what obstacles the government is trying to overcome.
Hold on a second, though. I have to push back here. A massive library and a dedicated PR team.
Yeah.
I thought the entire appeal of alternative dispute resolution was getting away from government bureaucracy and red tape. Isn't the state just building another bloated administrative department here?
I get why it looks like that. It might look like bureaucracy on paper, but it is deeply pragmatic when you actually look at human behavior.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, you cannot change entrenched public behavior without a massive educational push, which is exactly what that promotion division does. Think about it. We are culturally conditioned to litigate.
True.
When someone wrongs you, the knee-jerk reaction is, I'll see you in court. People want a judge to declare them the winner.
Right. There's this deep psychological need for vindication. You want someone in a robe to say, you are right and they are wrong.
Yep.
Exactly. So that Public Information Division's job is essentially to engineer a culture shift. They have to actively market ADR to the public and explain that choosing mediation is not, a compromise of your rights, but actually a much faster, more effective exercise of them.
That makes sense. But before we go further into those divisions, we should probably clarify the actual tools they are promoting, because the sources mention mediation, conciliation, and arbitration.
Yes.
And for anyone listening who thinks those are just like 3 synonyms for the exact same thing, they actually operate very differently, right?
Very differently, yes. So mediation is essentially guided negotiation. The mediator doesn't decide who is right or wrong.
They're not a judge.
Right. They just help guide the two fighting parties toward a mutual agreement. Conciliation is very similar. Though, depending on the jurisdiction, a conciliator might take a more active role in actually proposing solutions.
Okay, got it. But arbitration is entirely different. In arbitration, the third party, the arbitrator, actually acts like a private judge. They hear the evidence, and they make a binding decision that you absolutely have to follow.
So the OADR is tasked with promoting all of these options, and that makes the training division crucial.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you hire an arbitrator who doesn't understand contract law or a mediator who just completely alienates both parties, you are going to walk away hating the entire concept of ADR. You'll just go right back to suing people in traditional court.
Quality control is the only way ADR survives. If the public doesn't trust the practitioners, the whole system just collapses.
Yeah, the trust is everything.
Right. That is why the training division doesn't just, offer classes. It sets the national training standards, ensures compliance, and really acts as the gatekeeper by issuing certificates to these professionals.
And that leads perfectly into the Records and Library Division. I have to admit, initially, a library sounded incredibly dry to me.
It usually does.
But if you have arbitrators making binding decisions, they can't just be guessing or going off their gut feelings. They need precedent. They need to know how similar disputes were handled in the past.
Right. ADR is far more agile than a courtroom, but it cannot be lawless. The library gathers local and international jurisprudence, rules, and regulations. It provides the intellectual framework.
Ah, I see.
So when a business dispute is settled through arbitration, the resolution is rooted in solid, documented principles. It builds public trust by proving the system is actually intellectually rigorous.
Okay, so they have the structure to handle PR, quality control, and legal research. But does this office actually have teeth?
That's the big question.
Right. If two companies are at each other's throats, what authority does the OADR actually have to step in? The sources give us a very specific list of legal powers.
Let's hear them.
They can establish a library, obviously. They can conduct seminars, symposia, and conferences. They can set up those training programs, often working directly with the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, private organizations, and local or foreign governments.
They certify the professionals. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The very first power listed in the sources is the ability to act as an appointing authority of mediators and arbitrators.
Oh, wow.
But there's a massive, incredibly specific condition attached here. They can only appoint someone when the parties agree in writing that they shall be empowered to do so. They aren't a dictator forcing a judge on you. That is the crucial distinction between alternative justice and traditional litigation right there.
How so?
Well, in a traditional court setting, a judge is assigned to your case by the state. You don't pick them.
You just get who you get.
Exactly. And you are bound by their jurisdiction, whether you feel they are the right fit for your complex business dispute or not. But the OADR's power to step in and appoint an arbitrator or mediator hinges entirely on mutual consent.
That written agreement.
Yes, that written agreement is the bedrock of the entire alternative process. It means that the parties in conflict, even though they are fighting, they retain agency over how their dispute is ultimately handled. They are basically empowering the OADR to be a mutually agreed upon referee.
It is a massive transfer of power back to the individual. You aren't just at the mercy of the system.
Exactly.
Now, looking at the rest of their toolkit, they have some distinct financial powers as well. The sources note they are legally allowed to charge fees for services rendered, like the training and certifications we discussed.
Right.
Furthermore, they are empowered to accept donations, grants, and other assistance from both local and foreign sources.
What's really fascinating here is how these financial powers are deliberately structured to protect the agency's core mission from, political wins.
Because government budgets are notoriously volatile.
Oh, incredibly volatile. If a government agency relies 100% on annual taxpayer appropriations, its effectiveness can be completely crippled by a sudden budget cut.
Or a shift in a political administration that just decides they don't care about alternative dispute resolution anymore.
Precisely. By empowering the OADR to charge fees for its professional training and to accept foreign and local grants, the law essentially designs the office to be somewhat self-sustaining.
That's incredibly smart.
It really is. These financial tools ensure that the system can continuously improve itself, hire top-tier experts, and upgrade that legal library without solely draining taxpayer funds. It gives the OADR the financial independence necessary to execute a 10-year vision, rather than just surviving year to year.
A toolkit is just potential energy, though. If those powers we just discussed outline what the OADR can do, the source material also gives us their functions, which basically dictate what they must do.
The master plan.
Exactly. It is essentially their master plan for evolving the justice system. The functions state they must actively promote, develop, and expand the use of ADR in both the private and public sectors. They monitor, study, and evaluate how ADR is actually being used in the real world to formulate better policies. They also evaluate public and private ADR programs, gathering data on their specific rules, their procedures, and critically, how they fix any issues that pop up.
Right.
But there is one function that stands out as incredibly practical for the average person. They are required to compile and disseminate a highly detailed roster of ADR practitioners.
And this goes far beyond a simple phone book directory.
Way beyond. According to the textbook, this roster includes their addresses, their contact numbers, the specific ADR services they render, so you know if someone is strictly a mediator or if they do arbitration, and it lists their specific professional experience.
That's incredibly detailed.
It is. So what does this all mean for you? If you are a business owner and you suddenly need a mediator, the friction of finding someone credible is usually a huge barrier. You might be terrified of hiring a biased arbitrator.
Naturally.
The OADR removes that friction by acting as a highly vetted official Yelp for dispute resolution. It solves the trust issue immediately.
It creates a safe marketplace for justice. If a small business owner is looking at this roster, they know every single person on it has met the rigorous standards of the training division we talked about earlier.
But the sources also note something really surprising here. The OADR has a mandate to compile a similar roster for foreign or international ADR providers and practitioners.
Right.
Why is a Philippine government office spending resources vetting international arbitrators?
Well, this raises an important question regarding the reality of our current economy. Why include international practitioners? Because even for everyday people, disputes are no longer confined by national borders.
Oh, that makes total sense. Right? If you run a small e-commerce business out of your living room, you might have a supplier in Singapore or a web developer in Eastern Europe.
Exactly. Modern commerce is inherently global. If a local business has a contract dispute with an overseas supplier, they can't just rely on local laws.
No, of course not.
They need access to arbitrators who understand cross-border trade, international shipping agreements, and complex jurisdictional issues. By compiling international rosters, the OADR ensures that domestic businesses aren't left stranded when a conflict crosses a border.
It's really looking ahead.
It is. But the functions go even deeper than just compiling lists. One of their most critical mandates is to recommend necessary statutory changes to Congress.
Wait, really? So their job isn't just to enforce the current laws, it's to actively rewrite them?
They are tasked with developing and strengthening ADR practices in accordance with international professional standards. This creates a powerful feedback loop.
Okay, walk me through that.
They are actively evaluating programs, studying the friction points in real disputes, analyzing how the rest of the world is handling these legal issues, and then turning around and advising lawmakers on how to upgrade the country's laws.
Wow. The agency tasked with managing alternative justice is simultaneously the primary architect of its future.
Yes, they are ensuring the entire country doesn't fall behind as global legal standards evolve.
But that brings us to a massive structural question. You have an agency with the power to set national standards, evaluate local and international programs, advise Congress on legislation, and control the official rosters of who gets to work as a mediator.
That's a lot of power.
A ton of power. So who keeps the OADR in check? How do we know their policies aren't just, detached bureaucratic theories that fail in the real world?
Yes.
That brings us to our final section, the Advisory Council. Our sources outline a council whose specific role is to advise the executive director on policy, operations, and other relevant matters.
And they meet regularly, right?
Yes, they meet at least once every 2 months, or whenever the executive director calls them. They are appointed by the Secretary of Justice based on the executive director's recommendation, and they actually elect their own chairman from among themselves.
Very democratic.
Right. But the most vital detail is the composition. It is made up of exactly 5 specific sectors. It's basically an Avengers-style team of legal minds.
I love that analogy.
Sector 1 is the mediation profession. Sector 2 is the arbitration profession. Sector 3 is ADR organizations. Sector 4 is the IBP, the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, which is the official organization of all lawyers in the country. And Sector 5 is the Academ.
It is a brilliantly engineered structural stress test.
But why this specific 5-part combination? Why not just fill it with government bureaucrats?
Because if you isolate policymaking to just bureaucrats, you get systems that look flawless in a textbook but completely collapse when 2 actual human beings are fighting over a contract.
Oh, 100%.
This 5-part structure guarantees a mandatory collision of perspectives. You have the academe representing the theory, the research, and the cutting edge of legal thought. They're dreaming up the ideal system.
Okay.
But then you have the IBP, the traditional lawyers, sitting right next to them. The IBP ensures that these alternative systems don't violate existing constitutional frameworks. And just as importantly, they ensure that the traditional legal community views ADR as a valid tool rather than a threat to their profession.
And then you have the first 3 sectors, the mediators, the arbitrators, and the ADR organizations. They are the reality check.
Exactly. They are the boots on the ground. If the Academy proposes a brilliant new academic framework for mediation and the executive director loves it, the actual mediators on the council are there to say, that sounds wonderful in a university lecture, but it'll never work in a room with 2 angry business partners who are losing money by the hour.
That's fantastic.
Right. By mandating this specific mix, the law ensures that the OADR's policies are constantly balanced.
Yep.
They are intellectually rigorous, legally sound, and practically functional.
It really is a meticulously designed ecosystem. We started today by looking at the leadership structure, where a presidential appointment signals to the entire country that alternative justice is a top-tier priority. We explored the internal divisions tasked with the immense challenge of shifting our culture away from knee-jerk litigation while simultaneously building a solid foundation of precedent and standardized training. We looked at a toolkit that requires mutual consent to operate, while leveraging unique financial powers to ensure the agency's long-term survival. We unpacked a master plan that actively monitors, evaluates, and advises Congress on global standards, while providing you with a safe, vetted directory of professionals.
It's comprehensive, to say the least.
And finally, we looked at the Advisory Council, a built-in stress test ensuring that every policy actually works in the real world. So what is the ultimate takeaway for you, the listener, out of all this?
Well,
If you are ever faced with a daunting conflict, whether it's a messy real estate deal or an international e-commerce dispute, it is so easy to feel terrorized by the prospect of traditional litigation. But remember that an entire institutional machine, complete with libraries, certified rosters, international standards, and a built-in brain trust, exists right now, funded and empowered by the state, specifically to help you resolve that conflict without ever setting foot in a traditional courtroom.
And, as the OADR continues to refine its methods, monitor international trends, and aggressively promote these incredibly efficient alternative systems, it forces us to reconsider our assumptions about justice itself.
How so?
Well, think about it. If this parallel system consistently proves to be faster, cheaper, and fundamentally more reliable for resolving conflicts, how long until the traditional court system becomes the actual alternative?
Wow. That is a phenomenal thought to leave on. Thank you to everyone for joining us on this exploration of the sources, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.